And today I've got very pleased to have James Mann from Black Marble and also Gary Preti from Mando. And they're both MVPs, both work very closely with us on around evangelizing bot framework. So first session, we've got actually two sessions to talk about bot framework. The first session we're going to cover off a little bit of content here around why bots, some of the scenarios you might see. Talk about some of the dialogues and the state transitions across dialogues, a little bit about debugging and app insights as well. And also cover off that new service, the Azure bot service that we've recently made available. You can actually see a bot that's being used here on the right-hand side. This is an example of a Skyscanner bot that we've worked on. And we'll show you how to build this out. But I guess the first thing to do really is to hand over to Gary, and we'll talk a little bit about, just understand a little bit about why bots now.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks very much. It seems like over the last year, chatbots have really exploded.
Yeah, definitely.
Everywhere I look, I don't know about you, but there seems to be a new bot every day to use. So a lot of people said 2016 was the year of the bot. Yeah. But really, we want to delve into, why is that? And for me, there's a few reasons. So firstly, we have a look and we have a think about what we're using in our homes, what we're using in our daily lives all the time. So, a few years ago, Siri was released, and it was still it was a novelty. I think it's fair to say that there wasn't a huge uptake in terms of usage. But over the last 12 months, I think there's been a whole shift in people's behaviours. So we've now got things like the Google Assistant, we've got Cortana on the phones, we've got Alexa in people's households. And the proliferation of these devices is just getting more and more. I think I saw a stat this morning where they're expecting to see 25 million conversation-led devices sold in the next year, which is just incredible. It is. And I think as people start to use these within their own homes and within their daily lives, it means that talking to a chatbot just becomes more of a natural thing. It's the sort of thing that we're expecting to do. Rather than, say 12, 18 months ago, if you were talking to a chatbot, you wouldn't necessarily be all that comfortable with it. But actually, if you're going to talk to Alexa to play your music, or you're going to talk to Cortana to book your calendar appointments, why not talk to a chatbot for one of the brands? And we've also seen a huge rise in the use of messengers, so Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and all of those other messengers. And actually recently, messengers have overtaken social platforms. So there's now more people daily using messengers than there are on the big 4 social networks, which is quite incredible, really. It's hugely taken off. And 6 out of the 10 most used apps globally are messengers. So people are spending a lot of time in those apps and in those programs, on those platforms. So being able to launch chatbots and actually bring those to users where they already are, so they don't have to go away.
You're not expecting the user to go to your app or go
Absolutely.
to your
we've got huge app fatigue these days. A huge number of people haven't installed an app in 12 months. Or you install it and you use it and then you never use it again. Whereas, chatbots give us the ability to just be where the user is without the need to go and find it, go and install it. So
I'd probably add a caveat to that it's got to be useful in that context, though, because otherwise people will stop using the bots as well in the same way that they stop using apps.
Yeah, absolutely.
But makes sense for many scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. It's just breaking down the barrier, though, so I don't need to install it. It's just there. It's just like I'm talking to a friend.
The other thing as well is because you're distributing your bot across these messaging channels, you're not constrained by what device you use.
Well, exactly. That's a very good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can run on anything.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I think another reason is we've suddenly seen a huge rise in the available ecosystem for the bots. So platforms like Skype and Slack and Microsoft Teams have all got support for bots. But, previously, we've seen where they were fairly isolated. You'd build a Facebook bot, you'd build a Slack bot, and hopefully Microsoft Bot Framework bridges that gap and allows us to get it out on all of those channels. And when we think about the potential use cases, they're just huge. So we can be looking at public-facing, customer, consumer-facing bots where you can do retail or you can do intelligent FAQs. So answering those common questions for customer support, instant responses, not the call centre's open from 9 till 5. It's if I want to go and talk to a particular brand at 3 in the morning, like I often do, then I can go and talk to the chatbot and get answers to common questions. Hugely useful. But also we can look at internally facing bots as well. So maybe a HR bot that allows me to book a holiday. It's something that we've been doing at Mando. We're building out a HR bot so that you can request holidays, see how much leave you've got left.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to say, as you said, it's got to be useful, but we're not saying this is instead of the way you do it at the moment.
Exactly. It's just another way of doing it on actually a really powerful channel, and it's reducing friction.
It's all about reducing friction,
yeah.
and from the consumer's point of view, and the people implementing it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just giving the user a choice.
Yeah.
If you want to interact with that particular business function using a bot, absolutely fine. And it's really interesting because whereas apps were all about the millennials and people who are really au fait with technology, we're actually seeing people across the age spectrum being really au fait in using chatbots because there's no learning curve.
Sure.
It's just conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really key.
Like you'd have a chat with your friends.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So. Okay. So what kind of makes a great bot, I guess, because we've got. Let's have a look at the next slide here, and we'll have a quick look at. We kind of touched across several of these different points, but really a bot. When you're considering a bot, don't just build a bot for the sake of it. I think there are a few different points you need to bear in mind. First of all, it needs to easily solve the user's problem and efficiently. There's no point in taking 10 times more steps in a bot compared to the website or the app. There's just no point in that, I think so. So it's got to be better than the alternative experiences. Otherwise, people are going to use the apps and websites, and there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. It's actually use the conversational interface where it makes most sense.
In fact, one of the things, Simon, is we're seeing these hybrid chatbots, which are a combination of text and things like cards. And
sure.
We're going to see the location control, which kind of mixes in some of that UI element for more visual interest.
So. Absolutely.
Yeah. And people are used to it as well. There are various paradigms now within Facebook Messenger, like you say, rich cards, sure. or the location picker within Facebook, which we can take advantage of.
Sure. Yeah.
People will already know how to use these things, so we should definitely try and use them wherever possible.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and also, we try to make it natural and intuitive to use. So that doesn't necessarily mean learning lots of natural language. This is like not expecting people to type too much or have to talk too much to it or actually repeat what they want several times over, and just getting maybe getting getting stuck down conversational flows. It's all kind of designing that flow in such a way to make it intuitive, make it natural to use.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So let's take a look at the bot framework. I'm going to hand over to you, James, to talk us through the bot framework in a little bit more detail here.
Lovely. So, traditionally, if you've been looking at developing a bot, you might be targeting specific, messaging channels. So here we've got a nice visualization here where we've got a circle with sort of spokes going out to the different channels, and these are things that traditionally you'd sort of have to natively target.
Yeah.
And what Bot Framework does, it positions itself in the middle of that, and it lets us write a single, bit of business logic and expose that over whatever channel. So, if our users are on Facebook Messenger, if they're, home consumer users, they're more likely to engage over that channel. So we can just pretty much flick a switch and it's available. Okay. If we've got an internal sort of enterprise application, then we can use something like Slack or Microsoft Teams.
So we're building one bot, we host it somewhere, Azure.
Yes.
Then we can maintain that one bot, but we can just pick and choose which channels we want to.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
And it makes it super simple.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to break it down into 3 stages. So the first stage is to register your bot, and this is literally just filling in a form on the Bot Framework portal. You can upload an icon, you fill in some metadata about the bot, and then you tell the bot where the application endpoint is. We'll have a look at the application endpoint in a minute, but it's basically just either C# or Node code, as you can see on the page. So here we've got a C# bot application. We're just saying hello world here, just to kind of.
So we're going to focus a lot on C# today, aren't we? But as you say, Node is a fantastic option as well.
This really comes down to where your expertise lies. If you're more comfortable with Node, then you can do pretty much everything in the Node SDK as you can in the C#.
No,
some of the paradigms are slightly different. like you have
Well,
things
you'd
like
expect that,
waterfalls.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, the distribution part of it and the hosting part of it is exactly the same.
Yeah, and it's super straightforward. But as you say, you've got that parity between Node and C#, and things like extensions like the location control, which we're going to come on and you look at later. You can take advantage in both C# and Node. So it's really down to the developer to make that choice.
It is.
Okay.
Yep. So, you know, we talked about distributing a bot over multiple channels. Here we've got a really good example of a utility bot, which is, you know, we've written one implementation of, and then we're exposing it over web chat, Facebook, and Skype. So we're reaching users wherever, you know, the users are comfortable.
But if I wanted to take that same project then and say, okay, now I want it available in Slack,
Yeah.
I just do it.
Exactly, it's configuration at that point.
Yeah, and out the box you get Skype and web chat configured for you, but it's literally minutes to configure another channel.
Yeah. Very good.
So one thing I would say at this point is we're going to briefly introduce the bot framework, but everything that we cover, Simon, you've got a list of resources.
I have. So I've got a load of resources at the end. We'll cover those off and talk through some of those. And also, by the way, we'll be sharing the samples from across these sessions as well with you. So don't worry about that. So I think what we'll do now, we've kind of very briefly covered the bot framework. And actually, we covered it off. If you go back to the last Tech Days Online from September time, I think it was, there's some great sessions actually with James as well. Talking through the bot framework in general. So take a look at that if you want more of an introduction.
Yeah.
But now we're going to start looking at kind of modeling the conversation. How do you do that using the C# SDK and just to understand a little bit how dialogues work. So I think, James, you're going to talk us through that again? Yep.
So we've got this slide here which talks about how we model a conversation in bot framework. Bot framework is, you know, the fundamental building blocks of bots in bot framework is something called dialogues. And I think, you know, we've talked about this before, Simon. The best way to think about dialogues is, you know, screens in a traditional UI.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, if you think about a line of business application where maybe you've got a screen for products and you go into the product and you get detail about the product, you've got the same kind of idea with dialogues, and they just kind of layer on top, very much like...
Makes perfect sense.
Like screens. Bot Framework maintains these in a stack, and we'll have a look at an example to kind of illustrate what that means. So we've taken a really simple example of a banking bot here. This banking bot can do two things. It can either check a balance or make a payment. Okay? The card that you see in the screen at the moment is a dialogue. And you can see as we talk through the conversation, we're going to build up those dialogues.
Okay.
Okay? So the user's saying, I want to make a payment.
Right.
At which point we do something called transition into another dialogue. And Bot Framework will add a dialogue to the top of the stack.
So it on. Yeah.
So we're sort of in a different part of the conversation. We're still in the same conversation, but we're moving up a level.
Sure.
So now the bot's capturing information about who to make the payment to. The user's saying the account name. He's capturing that information, and then he's asking another question about how much to pay. User's, again, saying £100. And then the bot's completing this part of the conversation.
Right.
So at this point, the dialogue's finished. And we take the dialogue
off
the top
it.
of
Right,
the stack.
okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we can continue the same flow. Here we're checking the balance. We've got another dialogue to check the balance. We've got another sort of set of business logic in here that determines whether we're checking a current account or a savings account. And at which point we add another dialogue to the stack. We have more behavior in here. And then when we're done, we just pop those dialogues from the top of the stack and continue the conversation on.
So each dialogue effectively goes on top of the stack, do the work. When you've finished in that particular thing, off it goes, pops off, and you're just working without ever growing and ever shrinking the stack.
And it's probably worth pointing out at this point that, you know, we've shown very much here a stack of dialogues.
Yeah.
But it's worth pointing out that these dialogues are totally reusable.
Yeah.
So you can build a dialogue that will handle payments, for example. And then, you know, if you were using intent recognition using something like Lewis, which we're going to cover in the second session, you might actually trigger that payment dialogue from multiple places.
Yes.
So it's not a case of you build a single flow and then you have to recut that code to build another conversational flow. You can call out to these dialogues as and when you need to, and they will simply just pop back in to wherever they were called from. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really good point that Gary makes, because these are just C# classes effectively. And all we're doing is, we're providing a set of behavior that maybe makes sense in this conversation, but it might make sense in a different conversation.
Yes,
as well.
We use it. Yeah. Okay, so you've got a few methods here that be. What are these then? How do these?
So we talk about transitions in dialogues, and there's if you have a look at the bot framework documentation, you can get quite a lot of detail in terms of what these mean. But the three important ones that I want to talk about here are the ones you can see on screen. So we've got this idea of waiting. And this is waiting for a user to send a message in the same dialogue.
Okay.
So if you think back to the slides that we just saw,
right,
this is when, I
say,
say,
how can I help you, current or savings, and it was like current. That was all sitting within that single layer.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So that's quite, that's a common one, and you're always going to use that if you're using dialogues. The next one is to call another dialogue. And this is really, where the stack comes into play, and we're adding the dialogue to the top of the stack, and we're transitioning into that dialogue. And then finally, the done method completes the dialogue that you're currently in, and then it takes it off the stack.
Okay. Okay.
And
how I guess you're going to show us a bit of a demo in a minute. How easy is it to kind of keep track of where you are within the?
Well, I mean, it's a good question, and it is it's almost like you're programming in terms of callbacks.
Yeah.
Everything's very sort of callback centric, and it needs to be, because look, we're trying to model conversations, and they're not straightforward.
Yeah.
One of the things that dialogues are really good for is they can model anything.
Okay.
So you can model any conversation, but you need to put the work in to do that.
Yeah.
Gary's going to talk about form flow, which is actually a more
specialized dialogue.
Dialogue where you've got a capture process that you want to go through. And it works really well because it's really quick and easy to get up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth saying here, when you're designing your conversations, you can be thinking about, a traditional flow diagram. You can, user starts here, and they say yes or no, and you would transition between different states. And it's almost like, and this is really simplified, but almost every part of this flow diagram could be encapsulated as a single dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. And a lot of this comes down to good sort of development design practice, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to show us a bit of a demo about dialogue on your machine then?
Yep,
so, okay.
Yep, so I've got I've got a solution here that I've prepared. It's all prepared code, and what we've got is a set of dialogues that replicate what we've just seen in the slides.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I'm just going to quickly sort of talk you through this.
Sure.
So if you think back to the diagrams that we saw, we've got this idea of a root dialogue or a main dialogue. So that's what we're looking at here. And this is really the thing that starts everything off. This is the thing that's always on the stack.
Okay.
And we branch from this, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So the very first thing we do, we have a state transition. We wait for a message to be received by the user to kind of start the conversation. Okay. And here we're using this context wait, which we saw before.
Yeah.
And if I just press F12 to get into that, you can see that when the user sends a message, we're sending a text message back to the user saying, basically introducing myself as the banking boss.
Sure.
And would you like to check balance or make a payment? Okay, so pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We then have another state transition, and there we're waiting for the user to.
And that's where you're waiting on that same layer or that same dialogue.
Exactly. So we're still in the same dialogue, but we're at a different sort of. We talk about utterances, don't we? Where someone says something. This is a different utterance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if we go into message received operation choice, which is this method here, you can see that we're retrieving the message that has been sent by the user. Okay, and then we're just doing some really simple business logic to say, if they've said make payment, then add the make payment dialog to the top of the stack. Simple as that. If they've said check balance, add the check balance dialog to the top of the stack.
Seems pretty straightforward.
So a couple of things I just want to point out about this context call. So obviously we're adding a new dialog to the top of the stack, but we also have this callback, which is called when the dialog on top of the stack has finished.
Right.
So this is kind of giving control back to this dialog after the make payment dialog has finished. So we'll have a look at see what that looks like in a minute. Now this method here is obviously really simple for demonstration. This is a really good opportunity to kind of layer in natural language processing or whatever your business processing is at that point. And we're saying if the user hasn't said either make payment or check balance, we just go in a loop, basically. We just wait for a user to enter another message, at which point we can sort of interpret that again. So really simple. So let me just go into the make payment dialog just to kind of show you what that looks like. So make payment dialog, a couple of things to point out here.
So tab I dialog, okay, so it's inherited from, okay. So just checking that.
This thing here, if you remember back to the diagram, we're capturing information about who we want to make the payment to and the amount. So this is dealing with that. This is dealing with that, and the nice thing is Bot Framework does that for you. All you need to do is have member variables there and assign values, and because it's serializable, Bot Framework will take care of persisting that, maintaining that over the life of the conversation. Really nice.
So that actually means that the user could be halfway through a conversation, like you might be with a friend. Something happens, someone knocks on the door, you go away, and then you come back to the conversation later. But all of the state has been persisted for us. We've not had to do anything to do that. It's handled for us by Bot Framework. That's fantastic.
And that's where you get the value from something like the framework, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're showing a fairly simple example of it, but with conversational, the interface becomes more and more complex, then having the power of the framework really helps you handle that.
Yeah, it's taken away all of the complexity that we would have previously had to have rolled our own in terms of communicating between channels and persisting state and all of that. It's taken away for us. It's abstracted away. We don't need to worry about it. We can really focus on what matters, which is building that conversational flow that works for the user.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll quickly just talk through this, and then I'm not going to show you everything because a lot of it's sort of repeating the same thing.
Sure.
But you can see here I'm assigning the pay message to the private member, and that's persisted for me between states. I'm then waiting for another message to come from the user, which again I'm assigning that to private state. Once I've received those two values, then I'm just outputting, thank you, I've paid this amount to this payee. So the key thing is there, we're referencing the amount, which hasn't actually come back in this part of the conversation. So, that's really illustrating the persistence of that. Then finally, when we're done, we just say context done, which completes the dialogue and removes it from the stack.
Yep, and it's probably worth saying there that right now we're just passing a plain old object back, but you can configure your dialogue so that they can return anything. So you might return a Boolean, for example, and then in the callback delegate, when we return to our original dialogue, we can then get that result and act upon it. So if we returned a Boolean, we can do one thing if it's true, another thing if it's false. But we can return a more complex class as well. We might return a class that represents the payee with their account number and the balance, etc. So that's really useful for passing items between dialogues.
Sure.
That's really good point. Really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so rather than bore you to death with this, I'm just going to run this, and then we'll have a look at it in action. So I'm just going to start a new conversation. Again, we haven't introduced the Bot Framework channel emulator, but in the resources at the end of this deck, you'll have a link to this.
This is a great way of just being able to test locally, and it gives you the ability to look at the JSON. And it's really very, very helpful. But you're connecting up to the port there, okay, and you're going to...
I'm just going to connect to that, and then I'm going to send a message to the bot, and this kind of starts off the conversation. Okay. So you can see each stage I've put...
you've put the where you are, that's handy,
So I'm just going to say, I'll go through the make payment process. And it's asking me who I'd like to pay. So, none of this is complicated, but it's really sort of fundamental to running a good bot.
I think with bots, as we pointed out earlier, they don't have to be complicated. They just need to be able to... People just want to do something, perform an action, perform an operation quickly. you know,
Yes.
from those convenient channels. So actually, they don't need to be complicated. They don't need to have layers of natural language understanding. Of course, there are definitely situations where it's relevant. Not always. So.
Not always,
Yeah.
and I'd second that, Simon, and I'd say, you know, especially version 1 of your bot, you want to keep it as simple as possible, because you cannot anticipate everything that users are
exactly.
going to
So
do.
having, you know, this is really good stuff.
Start small and iterate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've walked us through that conversation. You know, we've captured some information. You can see at each point we've shown the dialogue where we are, and then we've returned back to the main dialogue, and I can continue on the conversation. I can say check balance.
Okay.
And that takes me into another dialogue, and again I can go into a further dialogue.
So you can see the way we're moving up and down.
So the whole time we're transitioning between these dialogues, and bot framework's managing the stack for us. We don't need to worry, we just need to make sure we provide the business logic that we need, basically.
That's really good.
So
that's great, thank you.
That's it.
So that's a brief overview of dialogues, and there's some great documentation in the bot framework around that. So let's talk a little bit about debugging a bot, because, you know, we don't all write bots instantly, perfectly. We have to debug it. So can you tell us a little bit more about debugging a bot and how we can do that? Yeah,
so, you know, you've seen already that a bot application is nothing special. It's just C# or it's just Node code.
Yeah.
It's actually an MVC Web API control. You know, if the audience has ever used MVC Web API before, it's exactly the same as that. So, you know, if you're already developing that, you already know enough to develop. So that means obviously locally you can use your existing debugging tools. So, you know, you can set breakpoints, you can use the immediate window, you can, you know, you've got all the nice conveniences of that. But we've got a video here which shows you remote debugging, which is supported in Azure. So if you host a bot in Azure Web App, you have the same behavior. So here we've got a problem with this bot, and it's behaving a bit odd. It's basically responding to the make payment the same way every time I type a command in. So obviously something isn't quite right. So the way I can debug this in Azure is I just attach the debugger.
Okay.
That'll set up the debugger in Azure, the remote debugger, and it'll attach the local instance of Visual Studio to that process running in Azure.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, we have condensed this down a little bit just for.
Just the delay that it takes.
There is a little bit of latency, but it's quite seamless. And then I can type the same command in again and see what happens. You know, see if I can replicate the issue.
And you've kind of shown us here C#. What about Node? What are the options around when using Node?
So there's a tool called ngrok, which is basically a HTTP tunnel,
right?
Which we can use with Node applications. It's really good. You host your bot locally, and you know, maybe you've got it published to Skype, or maybe you've got it published to some other public-facing channel. You use ngrok locally, and ngrok will tunnel the traffic to your local development environment.
That's handy. Yeah.
And the nice thing about ngrok is it's agnostic to the language, because it's the transport really. So you can use it with Node, you can use it with C#. You know, it's a really nice tool. So you can use Visual Studio as you've seen in this video, but you can also use ngrok, or there's other tunnels available as well that support bot framework.
Yeah. I think, and in terms of the remote debugger, that's a really good example. I think, in terms of hosting a bot, we can host it anywhere as long as it's HTTPS and it's publicly available. So it's worth calling out that if you wanted to host it on premise, you can do. But one great example of using Azure and Azure App Service, for example, is you get a lot of this out of the box in terms of remote debugging. It's really neat, really quick. You can literally get a bot from 0 to working in minutes.
Okay. So brings us very neatly onto Azure Bot Service.
Thank
you very much for that, Gary. Thank you. So I think James, you were going to actually no. Sorry. James, you were going to talk a little bit about Azure Bot Service. Just tell us a little bit about this, because this is quite a new service, isn't it? And it is still in preview.
Still in preview.
So I think we made it available probably just before Christmas, I think. So I think Gary touched on it a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about how do you use it, why would we use it?
So Azure Bot Service is, as you can see, we've called it Bot as a Service, provided by Microsoft. And what it gives you is all the tools and all the services that you need to develop your bot and publish it and distribute it to users, that you can manage that from one place, basically your web browser. So it's a really nice sort of, it's a nice tool for prototyping and development. It works really well for development because it's an instant, you know, you can write your bot and you can instantly see the results of changes you're making. Okay, so I've got a demo to kind of show you. First of all, we've got a few screens just to kind of show you, you know, what it looks like. In here we've got a view of the IDE, the Azure Bot Service IDE. You can see this looks quite familiar to you if you've used Visual Studio before. We have a code editor in the browser. We have an embedded chat window as well, so we can literally, you know, type commands to the bot and you know, see how it's reacting without leaving the browser window. And then we have, you know, a debugging window as well, so we can sort of see what's going on. It's really, really nice. So I'm just going to transition over to a demo that I've got on my machine, just to kind of show you what this looks like. So I've got a...
I'm going to just wait for the screen to pop over. Is it over? Yeah, there we go.
So I've got a really simple bot here.
So you've gone to the Azure portal, you've searched for bot service, and you've created a very simple bot using C# in this case.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know...
Is it C#? Yeah.
This is C#.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So one thing I would say is it's very quick to get up and running with this, but it does take a couple of minutes to provision. That's why I've already provisioned it.
Okay, yeah.
So we've got a dialogue in here, echo dialogue.
Okay, so there's basic echo example on this.
So very straightforward. Again, we're using, you know, the dialogue transitions that we talked about earlier. Here we're just sending a message.
So it's exactly the same.
It's
exactly the same, but you're doing it within an editor, within Azure, and this is all sitting on top of Azure functions and kind of doing a load of work for you, and so therefore it's very scalable.
It's very scalable, and it's very low friction as well for developers because they don't need Visual Studio. They don't need any tools other than a web browser.
And there are multiple templates available, aren't there, as well? So when you create your bot service, we're going to come on later on to talk about proactive bots in the second session. So there's a proactive bot template.
There's Q&A one as well, which again
we're going to absolutely, we're going to cover that in the second session.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you what that looks like. So I can send a message in the chat channel, and you can see it's come back with a nice message that I've got in there. So I've exposed this bot. I'll just quickly talk you through the channels. So, you know, if you're using Bot Framework without Azure Bot Service, you'd still have access to this, but it's not centrally managed. You'd have to.
But in the case of this, it's all within the Azure portal.
Within the same place. So, you know, I've already configured this for Teams, Skype, Slack, and web chat. But if I wanted to, you know, add Facebook Messenger, click Add, provide a bit of configuration, you know, some IDs and some keys, and it's all ready to go. Okay, so quickly demo this. I've created a. I've got a.
You've created a team, Microsoft Teams.
Yeah. So if I just log into here.
Sure. This is using that bot from the bot service, running and.
So what I can do is I can click Add to Teams.
Yep.
And that will add the bot to here. You can see I've already been testing. So I can type hi, and that's running the code that I'm editing in Azure Bot Service. It's really
very
nice.
Cool.
So you know, I can make a change to this. If I just go back into here and I say, you know, maybe add 2017 to this, save that, just make sure it's built okay.
So you get the full feedback there of what's going on. Yeah.
So then if I come into Slack, I can talk to, you know, this is the same code. I really want to kind of hammer that home. You know, I've not made any changes particular to the channel, and you can see, hopefully, we'll get a response.
You've got that new change directly reflected. Can you go back to Teams? Let's have a quick look at it in Teams again. Awesome. I mean, it's just great.
That is great. That's so good. So, yeah, so that, hopefully that gives you a flavour of bot service. I think it's fantastic. There's a lot that we haven't talked about. It integrates with your continuous integration that you've set up in in your own.
So you're managing everything from one place.
Yeah,
but both approaches perfectly. It really depends what you have.
Yeah,
what
it
you
does.
want to
but
do
that can be really, really useful, not only for developing, a full bot, but it can be great for rapid prototyping. You can instantly get started with one of the templates.
Yeah, sure.
Rapidly build something up and test it all in the same window. Fantastic.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
So we talked about building a bot. We talked a little bit about hosting a bot, and also with a bot service. So when the bot's out there, okay, it's live. We need to know more information about it, what's going on with the bot, because we need to understand where the friction points are with it, where it's not responding to the user.
Yep.
So that's going to bring us on to, I think you're going to cover off App Insights around this?
Yeah, that's right. So many of the audience may already be familiar with App Insights, but if you're not, it's a fantastic service. It's Azure-based, and it's the ability for us to drop in analytics into our application. So just how, when you've got a website, everybody knows if you've got a website, you need to plug Google Analytics into it so that you can get metrics from it, or you can see errors, 404 pages, etc. It's absolutely no different with our bots. So pretty much any .NET application or Node.js application we can drop application insights into, and that's going to then start sending telemetry right out of the box from our bot up to an application insights instance within Azure, which we're going to look at in a minute. But it's super useful because out of the box we're going to get response times, request rates, any exceptions. So one of the things, you can't always be there. You're not always on the end of the conversation with a user. But you may get a call and say, the bot's not necessarily understanding me correctly, or I'm having a problem. You can jump straight into Azure and see if there's been any exceptions and dig into what they are. We can get some diagnostic traces as well. But even better, we can start to add our own custom telemetry to a bot. So we're going to come on and talk about Lewis later on, and natural language processing, which is going to allow us to determine a user's intent. Or we might want to know what users are using our bot for, and we can use App Insights to do that, and not only get the out-of-the-box charting, but really drill into our own custom metrics as well.
That's really important. Okay.
And adding it to your project is super, super simple. So literally right-click on your project. You also get the option when you create the project if you want to build App Insights straight in.
That's within the bot portal. So there's a checkbox in there, isn't there?
That's right.
Click on that, and
so
I think you provide their
that.
ID, and there you go.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
But the other way of doing it is right within Visual Studio, right-click on your project and just click the Add Application Insights Telemetry button. And that's then going to walk you through, and you want to follow on with the instructions. So it will add the SDK to your project.
Right.
You will then register your app with Application Insights, and that's going to create the App Insights instance within Azure. So you're going to get the portal, which you're then going to be able to navigate over to and start to drill into some of those metrics. So if we just jump over to my machine, and I'm going to show you a really, really quick demo of adding some custom telemetry to our bot.
Okay.
There we go. So right here I've got a demo that I'm going to be using throughout today, and this is just the messages controller which we saw earlier on, and handles our incoming messages. And a really simple thing that we might want to track is maybe we want to track the channel that the user is coming from, because we may well have our bot, as we've seen, out there on Skype and Slack and web chat.
It'd be really handy to...
Be really useful to know what the usage figures are across those. And we can also potentially have our bot out there being used in different locales as well. So maybe we want to track what the locale of the user is. So I've set this bot up already with Application Insights, so the SDK is already there. So now, literally all I need to do to start adding custom telemetry is to add an instance of the telemetry client, which is part of the SDK. And then I can create a string dictionary where I'm going to start adding some properties to it. So in this instance, I've added a property called channel. And from the activity, the incoming message, I can add the channel ID, so the channel name, and the locale of the user. And then I can use the track event method to say, I want this event to be called message received within the portal. So when I go into the portal, I'm going to see events being raised by my bot every time a message is received. I'm going to pass the properties to go along with it. So when that event is triggered, I should see the channel ID and the locale. And once that's there, that's it. you can run that bot now, and that will start to send telemetry straight up to Azure, as well as the out-of-the-box things like the server response times. We're going to get our custom metrics as well.
Okay.
So if I just switch over to my browser, I've already logged into the portal.
Yep.
And here we can see my utility support bots app insights portal. So I can see what my server response times have been, how many live users, how many servers I'm monitoring, things like the average response times of the application. All really, really useful stuff.
Yeah,
and the fact that you get this out of the box is just incredible.
Great, yeah.
But what about our custom telemetry? So if I switch over here, I can then use the App Insights analytics screen to start to dig in. And here I'm saying I want to get my custom events, which have been raised, order them in terms of time, where the name is message received. And I think it's really important to point out here, we could pepper our bot applications with different events.
Yeah.
So we could have message received, we could have, you know, a user's reached the end of a particular flow or a particular goal.
And one of the examples that we talked about before was Lewis. You know, maybe Lewis's users are interacting with your bot in a way you don't anticipate. So things like that, you know, capturing what the users are saying and being able to kind of report on that later.
Well, it's really important, isn't it? Because otherwise, if they're not getting the answer, if it's not responding, and it says, "Sorry, I don't understand," they're going to stop using it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really important.
So super useful service. Everybody should have it switched on because you never know when you're going to need that out-of-the-box information, and it's great for tracking custom events.
Sure, no, that's excellent. Well, thank you for that. Okay, so that kind of brings us to the end of our first session on bots. Hopefully you found that useful. Some resources. I've promised some resource links. So Gary and James have a really active blog, and the links are up there. Please go and visit them. Loads of great articles on that. Your Twitter handle, you're kind of on Twitter quite a lot, aren't you? So,
Just a little
so
bit.
really busy, and myself actually, we're always talking about cognitive and bots and everything around that subject. The samples from today, there's the link for the GitHub there as well. So, you know, please go in and take those. And of course, we've got the follow-up session coming up where we'll show you lots more demos as well. There's aka.ms/bot resources. It's kind of a blog post that I keep together, and lots of samples and tutorials, including some great tutorials from both James and Gary. Some case studies as well. And then we've got the links there for the bot framework. We've got it for the bot builder, which is actually, because it's all open source, isn't it, the bot framework?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So it's all in there. And some another load of samples. And then we've got some cognitive services, which we'll cover off a little bit more in the next session. Yep. So the next session coming up. So in, 15 minutes? So please don't go away. We'll be talking about form flow. We'll be talking about cognitive services. We're talking about adding natural language understanding, or Lewis, Q&A maker, location control, and also adding those proactive notifications back in, for your bot to call back to the user. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you both very much. If you want to watch this session on demand, it's at Channel 9, or it will be. Our Facebook channel as well, you've got the link there. Please go on to that, ask questions. After our session, so after the next session, Gary and James will be on there answering as many questions as you want about the bot framework. So you always got to add that. Also, if you want to find out more about the MVP program, then please don't hesitate to go to that link as well. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we'll be back at 12 o'clock, I think. Thanks very much.
Thank you.